Is this bout of seasonal choppiness in stocks a helpful reset to refresh the bull market, or signs of a more fragile tape emerging? Let's ask Chris Hyzy, CIO of Merrill and Bank of America Private Bank. Chris, good to see you.
You too, Mike.
We've been through versions of this before, right? With the high momentum stocks, they hyper concentrated index. A lot of these imbalances are presented, happened at the start of this month. Market tries to just kind of take money out of one pocket, put it into the other, and cool off where it needs to cool off. How are you reading this episode?
So you try to parse it and you try to find out, is this like a true rebalancing that's happening with longer dated money? Is it some of the systematic strategies trying to unwind a little bit of their overexposure? And there's not a lot of evidence to suggest either or. So it seems like it's across the board. It's a little bit of an exhale. It is obviously the last tail end, a couple weeks of summer in August. You mentioned seasonality. This is when we should be buying on weakness. When you don't have any fundamental news, it's just simply the market got tired. And there isn't a lot of on the buy side to kind of pick up for some of the areas. And it latches on to any negative headline and sometimes creates them. So we would use this weakness as a buying opportunity. And, you know, it all stems from what are profits going to do? And we still think profits for the remainder of the year and into next year. That's your linchpin, that's your catalyst.
Well, yeah, and consensus earnings forecasts have been inching up for this year and next. That's certainly a support. But to your point about how maybe the stories start to crop up when the price action gets a little bit less favorable, this has coincided with a bit of a rethink of the AI theme in terms of where we are, whether we've overplayed that hand, whether given companies have been granted a lot more credit in advance than they deserve. I mean, Meta, down for days. You know, you keep having these negative headlines. I keep waiting for that stock to maybe ignore some negative headlines and bounce a little bit. Now, it's obviously not down huge compared to how much it was up. But how are you now thinking about the AI kind of mega cap tech trade if you're looking for places where you would want to buy this dip?
Yeah, there's still a lot of people, believe it or not, that are waiting to see some of these names come back to earth a little bit. But we all know this. The CapEx story for generative artificial intelligence is still going up. In other words, the hyperscalers are still increasing their growth rates of what they're adding into it. So until that crests, Mike, these names are still going to be additive and much higher growth than the rest of the S&P. So if you are in the short-term world of looking at momentum in terms of earnings growth, and some look at three types of momentum, price, news, and earnings, these are the names that still have that. So yes, they're going to get ahead of themselves, for sure. We've seen it time and time again. Until the earnings story, until the CapEx story crests, those are areas of the market that will still be the leader.
Are we seeing anything in the way the market's behaved in this last little stretch to suggest there's a little bit of a hesitation about just how strong the underlying economy is? I mean, cyclical stocks have actually done pretty well going into this period, although you start to see some reawakening in some of the defensive groups recently.
Yeah, absolutely. You're seeing in obviously some of the beaten down pharmaceutical areas is one, some of the consumer staples. But what's interesting is you mentioned small caps before. Small caps, one of the better performers in the last month, and particularly in August. Now, we've seen that happen before, too, only to kind of fizzle out. But something seems to be changing a little bit there. It seems like some of the industrial side of the small caps is picking up because of, you know, we're not going to say a manufacturing renaissance, but certainly there's better news coming in the manufacturing world, and the small caps are, a big haven for that. So I think this rotation, this rebalancing, still can continue, even if tech remains that cornership leader that's within the market. I think you can have both sides.